True Crime Tuesday, and now we've finally made it, I reckon.
Yes.
With this bloke. What about this bloke, ladies and gentlemen? 34 years in the police force, including 25 years in homicide investigation. That is a quarter of a century experience in armed hold-up squad, organised crime squad. He was a big part of the William Tyrell investigation. Well, he's left the force but still wants to make a huge difference, and he's doing exactly that, ladies and gentlemen. I'm talking to the man, Gary Jubelin. Welcome to the Run Home with Joel and Fletch. Gaz, g'day.
How are you guys?
Going good.
That's good.
You look great, Gaz. How old are you?
I'm 60.
Gosh,
no way.
Far out.
Yeah.
What's the secret then?
Yeah.
What's the secret?
Living a good life. No, I have no idea. I train all the time. I've always trained, so that sort of keeps me sane. But saying that, like, I like to let the hair down a little bit. Don't make a comment. Fletch.
Okay.
When I say let the hair down.
Yeah, no. So for our listeners, there's not much on top. For Gaz.
Yeah, just enjoying life. I think.
And you love your surfing, Gaz, do you?
Yeah, I don't surf as much as I would like to, and my ability is my estimation of my ability is probably above as you get on in life a little bit. It's a little bit harder to get up on the feet, but we still have a go. A few mates that we catch up with.
Can I ask you this, mate? So, were you sort of after you left the force? Was this something that you wanted to get into, like podcasting and the media and that sort of stuff, or was it, basically that's the avenue that you had to do?
It sort of found me because when I left the police in, let's describe it as controversial circumstances, I was charged and convicted under the Listening Devices Act, not a real serious offence. I recorded a conversation on my telephone when I was speaking to a person of interest in relation to a child abduction. Didn't hide the fact, but anyway, the organisation I worked for charged me, and then the courts convicted me. So I didn't have a job. I had a criminal record. I couldn't be a private investigator. Couldn't get my licence, and I got a lot of offers to go into the media on different things. To the point where I was sort of fielding different things, and News Corp were kind enough to sign me up to do some investigative journalism, which came with also doing podcasts as well.
Right.
And started off the I Catch Killers podcast. Basically, had no idea what I was doing, and my old workmate Jason Evers, we went to the pub and had a few beers and recorded the conversation, and that was the first episode. And
Wow.
That went well. It was a long-form conversation, and on the back of that, we've continued on, and since then done over 400 episodes.
Okay, you got what you wanted, didn't you? So what he's trying to ask you, Gary, right? Because he's got this saying, and he hammers the listeners with it. Sometimes the best gifts come badly wrapped. And he's trying to set you up so as if to say, look, it was a bad thing at the time.
No.
That's what you're trying to do with your saying, Brian.
Can I ask you about the listening device, right?
Yeah.
Listening device in inverted commas. Don't you have listening devices anyway? What's the difference between using a tape recorder and...
See, I wish you were the judge.
Yeah.
Because there were listening devices in the place. And I was worried that the listening device wouldn't work, so I recorded it on my phone.
And is that illegal?
Well, apparently so. I believe I had you could do it, and I tried to put this out of my mind, but legislation was along the lines, if you had a lawful reason if you had a reasonable cause to protect your lawful interests. And my interest was, I was worried that the person I was speaking to, it wasn't going to be a friendly conversation, would make allegations against me.
Gotcha.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And so I went down that path, and that's why I recorded it. And I didn't make any secret from it. Everyone knew it. So I'm not a real good crook if I went down that path.
And not to we didn't mean to get in for this conversation, but how did that come to air? How was that brought to their attention?
There was... The first I knew about it, they had search warrants from my phone, and I was taken up to an office and cautioned, and that was my sort of last day of operational policing.
Wow.
So, yeah, it was a lot done behind the scenes leading up to it, and just sort of dropped it on me midstream. But the weekend, and I know we've gone down a path we didn't expect, but the weekend before this happened, I got flown up to Tamworth because 2 police officers had been shot, so I'm overseeing that. Then I come back and there's a murder at Newcastle.
Oh, wow.
And then on the Tuesday, this gets dropped on me, and all of a sudden I'm too bad to work.
Gary, let's talk about the podcast. So the first time you sat down with a crook.
Yep.
I'm going to say crook?
Yeah, you can say crook.
Yeah, okay. Well, these colourful gentlemen, when they're telling us, because I was listening to the one with Ron Isherwood. That was awesome. And you were saying, they were saying, because Ron was an old crook, and he goes, I can't believe I'm sitting here talking to you. Does it ever get a little bit hectic, like us versus them?
Oh, most definitely. And when I went into the prison, and like normally if we go in as cops, you're separated from the prisoners, but they gave me full access to the prison. And, yeah, it might come as a surprise, but I'm not the most popular person in the maximum security prison, being a high-profile ex-cop coming in there. So there was a couple of interesting times and, yeah, a bit of shit thrown my way. Not literally, but, yeah, verbally. And I found some people didn't want to talk to me, and I get it. Yeah, like if they didn't have the shits with me because I put someone in or one of their friends in, they don't like the cops. And so I had to respect that, but gradually the sort of barriers broke down and okay, well, what are you doing walking around here? But I got some strange looks and, yeah, it caused a bit of kerfuffle to start with.
This is the new podcast.
Yeah.
So well, I know we're going to get to that, but how did you come up with that idea of going into prisons? And
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Ron Isherwood, and on the I Catch Killers podcast, I've had a lot of major league crooks, and for whatever reason, we've sort of brokered a peace deal, and they come on and talk to me, and I let them hear their side of it, because true crime, and this is True Crime Tuesday.
Yes.
It's not one dimensional.
No.
It's from both sides. I know it from the police side, but let the bad guys or reform bad guys have their say. And one of them told me, and Bernie Matthews, and he was longest-serving prisoner in Katingal. He was a heavy dude. He spent 30 years, armed robber, escapee, that type of thing. I became quite friendly with him after I left the cops. And he said to me, Gary, because he was dying. I was visiting him when he was dying, and he's gone, in jail, if you treat us like animals, we come out like animals. And that sort of got me thinking about that. I had some corrective services officers that I became friendly with, and they were telling me about this project up in Macquarie Correctional Centre up at Wellington. And they said we're doing things a bit differently in maximum security. We're letting prisoners live in a dorm, which maximum security prisoners living in a dorm, to me that seemed like a recipe for disaster. And they said, and they've given more freedoms, and they're treated with a little bit, let's say, respect and humanity.
So done with the cells, no cells.
Yeah, but are these murderers?
Yeah, like the full range. Yeah, it's there's lifers in there. These are it's maximum security, and so you had the whole range of prisoners. But they said, well, why don't you come up and have a look? And I've said I'd love to if you think I'm not going to cause a riot walking around there. And they said, no, you come in. We're not sure how they'll react, but they'll either talk to you or they won't talk to you. And so I spent a couple of weeks up there and had full access to the prison and just getting a sense of what was going on in there.
Are you thinking that other jails might follow suit? Like, what's the success rate of these blokes coming out?
Yeah, well part of the thing was about recidivism. In New South Wales, we've got a high recidivism rate. You go in jail and the likelihood you're going to come back into jail. And, they want to break that cycle. This is getting them the skills that they don't come from this jail, let's call them the traditional jails, where, and prisoners were saying to me, you didn't know if you were coming back alive every time you stepped out your cell door.
Yeah.
You're locked up for 18 hours a day. Then you meet these guys up at Macquarie Correctional Centre, and they work for 7 hours, study for 7 hours. They have access to the gym. They've got a gym or a courtyard off their dorm, and there's no lockdown to 9 o'clock. They can go outside, see the stars. There's bars over it, obviously. Like they've got all the prevention or protecting people not escaping. But they give them this freedom. And what I found amazing, this sort of broke me up. Normal jail conflict is resolved, or you imagine how jail conflict is resolved, there's bloodshed. With this, in the dorm, if they don't like you, Fletch, they'll go, okay, well, Joel and Gary have sort of voted you off the island. They negotiate and just say...
I'm out of the dorm.
They mediate and negotiate and all that. And these are, they're not just your run-of-the-mill nice guys, prisoners that shouldn't be in there. There's some heavy dudes in there, and that's the way they manage the prison.
You know what, Bron, when you think about that properly, because I would have had the same thought that Gary had initially, but when you think about it, right, once you get past the first few weeks and everyone's sleeping in the dorm, there's been no chaos, because you've been given something that is so far better than what the general prison system is like, you'd be petrified of tripping up and losing it, wouldn't you?
Yeah, well, they said, and this got me thinking too, and this is the corrective services officers there, and it's a better world for them too. There's not that violence that they've got to deal with on a day-to-day basis in other prisons. they give them the rewards and then they take them away if they misbehave. Whereas in other prisons, it's more, you got nothing. If you behave, we'll give you something maybe, and you work your way up. But they give them the rewards, the freedom and all that. To me, and I haven't gone soft since I've left the cops, and it wouldn't work for every prisoner, but to me, it creates a person that's a better person when they're coming out. Because if people go into jail, most people come out. And if we can make them come out better people than they went in, it makes sense. And, yeah, I look at it from a victim's point of view. That was my big thing in the cops, making sure the victim's interests are looked after. But if we reduce crime, we reduce victims. So anyone that says, and I'm sure there's people out there going, no, stuff it, they should be in there breaking rocks and eating bread. And I understand that attitude, but if you think, it's not going soft on crime, it's just going smarter on crime.
Gary, just going back to, okay, so you're out of the coppers. Is there anything stopping current police coming to you as a consultant and saying, because you've got all this experience and you know a lot of these criminals, can they come to you and you help them on a case, or because you've been discharged? Is that the word?
Well, yeah. I resigned. I wasn't sacked.
Right.
I resigned. I got charged after I put my resignation papers in. What the purpose of that was, I'm not sure. Ideally, that would be the situation. And, yeah, I got this wealth of knowledge, but current serving police generally are not allowed to speak to me because I'm, this so-called, convicted bad guy.
Right.
Because I got charged. And,
but if you could help a case knowing it, surely, or is that just...
No, it makes sense. And I think just on a bigger, broader issue than just me, it makes sense because when cops, you take away all this experience, and a cop, sometimes you just hit the wall and you can't go on anymore, and they retire. But they've got a wealth of experience. And especially with detectives, and I'm thinking, how much knowledge I've got, I still know how to solve a murder. You don't lose that overnight when you've been doing it as long.
Yeah.
And, I think there would be benefits of relying on the experience that's lost. We've got a fairly young police force at the moment, and having that mentorship, it doesn't have to be me. There's plenty of better detectives than me going around that are retired, but getting them looking at cases, I think that would be a real good idea.
You know the police, Brian, how brave basically all of them are. Like, my dad was a copper, and he was one of the first on scene for an early copy, which I shared with Gary off air. But when I grew up as a kid, and I've still got Dad, but I never once ever saw fear in him. And when I thought about it, I see the same with Gary, and I thought maybe when you little blokes like myself, and then even you coming through, Brian, playing rugby league, it looks as though it's terrifying, but bit by bit, incrementally, you get there to the point where you're not one bit scared of running into three blokes who are 100+ kilos. You're not one bit scared.
But they don't have Roscoe's.
No, that's right. No, but the point is, like,
But
policemen and policewomen, you become so immune to it, don't you? Like, I never see fear ever in my dad, and he's not a big guy.
Yeah. You become battle scarred. I describe it that way, and that's I see it with detectives. You can't shock me. Like, you're going to shock me? I've seen everything the world's got to offer. So you become that. You become seasoned with the years and years of experience. And I'd say this, like, all the time that I went to work in the cops, I learnt every day. Like, every day I learnt something, and you just put it in that knowledge bank. And so when you turn up at the crime scene, and I've seen this before, I know this, you get that instinct to what's going on. I was trained by people that had that. There was one, I had some great mentors, but one bloke, Paul Mager, was my boss for about 10 years, and he'd just sit there quietly, wouldn't be doing a great deal. Didn't have to on the simple murders, but if it got complicated, you go to him and he could dissect it quick, smart, and that's experience. I suppose it's like on the football field, an experienced player on the field, has been there, done that. You know when the game's turning and what to do.
Gary, what about all this drama now with all the bikies and this Middle Eastern crime going on? Do you just sit back and just think, thank God I'm not in the cops anymore? Or are you sitting back going, geez, I wish I was still there to get my teeth into this?
Look, I don't want to be that cop that's retired and still want to do something. Yeah. But between you and me, and if no one else is listening, there's times where I look...
That's correct, by the way. You see our ratings?
Well, for your mum. But I would like to, when I see it, it's like a challenge. It's like I see crimes, and I try not. And I'm getting better the longer I stay out of the cops. But you see, if I see a murder or something going on, I'm thinking I'd like to get involved in that.
When I was listening to Ron, to what you were talking about, I could sort of resonate with him? Like he was a sort of a knockabout and he was saying all these things. He was talking about Balmain and all that sort of stuff. And I go, whereas I'm looking at these gangsters now, and they don't seem to have the... Us, you know, I know they're bad people, but they don't seem to have... Like, I think you were talking about there was like a code back in the old days, like a gangster code.
I noticed it in the time I was in the police, and if we talk bikies, because everyone understands the bikie culture, that the old school bikies, they had a way of doing things, and normally they'd settle their business in-house, or it wouldn't be on the main street. Then it started to escalate. I was in gang squad when the airport, between the Hells Angels and that happened. And I'd been out that night, and I think there'd been 7 houses shot up. I was the on-call inspector, and it was just escalating, and we just did not have the resources to rein it in at that time. And then when the thing happened at the airport, that's when Strike Force Raptor was formed, and okay, well, enough is enough because they've done it in public. What I'm seeing with the crimes here in Sydney, and I'm on the outside, I'm looking from the outside, so I haven't got any inside knowledge, is they're becoming more brazen, and it's almost making a statement. If you shoot someone in the main street and leave the body there, that's you're trying to make a statement. It's sort of escalating like that, and that's where that's where innocent people get caught up in the violence.
Just on the Raptor squad, how do they choose that? Is it if I'm going to put it in rugby league terminology, do you got to be an Origin player to get into Raptor, or do you get hand-picked? How does the Raptor...
They formed it to take on the bikies, so they're
pretty tough dudes.
Generally, they were. And in my time when Raptor came in, they were good. They did, and I'm not saying they're not good now. I just don't know, but they were people that were pretty willing. And I remember one fella, and he was the world's toughest, nerdy-looking bloke, but he was a good boxer. And people would have a go at him, and you just think you have no idea what he's about to unleash. And it didn't always get violent, but they were competent people too. They didn't have to take a backward step, if I say that.
I've got a mate. I've shared this story with you before, Brian. What was the Garlows used to be across the Coogee Bay Hotel?
Yes.
And a mate of mine who you've just described perfectly, that same sort of person. You know he can throw him, but unassuming. He's sitting in the gutter, a bit hung, having a pie, and the Barmy Army sort of turn up and they start singing 5-0, 5-0, 5-0, right? Sorry, the Australians are singing the Barmy Army. So all of a sudden the Barmy Army peak up. They think he's the one who's been singing the song. They start going for him. My little mate's dusted about 3 or 4 of them up. And then there's this silence. And next thing they start up again, 6-0, 6-0, 6-0, and fired up. Are you in a rush to go, Gary? Nah, we'd love to keep you because 6 to go play. We've got to break very, very shortly. Just on, you mentioned the William Tyrell case. I know it's very difficult for you to go into proper details, but for those who don't know, where's it at right now?
It's, you've got a couple of things happening with the William Tyrell matter. You've got a coroner's matter coming up, which I believe is going to be in the early new year. Now, when I left the police 4 years ago, they were going to wrap up the coroner's matter, and they still haven't wrapped up the coroner's matter, so it's not before time. So that comes out. It's also, and I don't like to add fuel to it because I think it was disgraceful the way it was released in the media, that a person, I won't name the person or point the finger, but a brief of evidence, or not a brief of evidence, a report was put to the DPP to see if there was warrant charges on a particular person. That was 6 months ago, and we still haven't heard from that. So my take, and bear in mind, I've got a vested interest in the William Tyrell matter. I'm not sitting here as not involved in it. I led the investigation for 4 years, but I am not. I don't like the way it's being played out in the media. I think there needs to be some sort of inquiry about what's gone on with the William Tyrell matter. So
can I ask you this? Just what is the coroner matter? What is that? I know the coroner goes and says how the child or victim was killed, but why isn't this been done before?
Because what happens if and let's not talk William Tyrell, just something general, just to give you a sense. We can come back to the William Tyrell thing, but if someone dies in suspicious circumstances, I'll call the homicide out. We'll start the investigation, treat it as a homicide investigation. If we don't get a result on the investigation, the matter's got to be referred to the coroner. So William's disappearance was almost 10 years ago. That it hasn't been resolved. No one's been charged with his abduction or his murder, and it's gone before the coroner. So the coroner then determines.
Right. We do have to break, but I tell you what, he's been kind enough. Gary Jubelin, True Crime Tuesday. Breaking Badness is the podcast, so breakingbadness.com.au. Gary's going to stick around, which our listeners and most certainly us, Brian, are pumped about that. It's a run home with Joel and Fletch. More to come on the other side of this with the great Gary Jubelin. Welcome back to the run home with Joel and Fletch. Thanks to MFP Easy, voted Queensland's best fiberglass pool builder, and Sonos. Game-changing sound this festive season. Brian Fletcher hasn't the board started to fire up. They're loving our guest who has quite kindly, he's got the set restart, 6 to go, play on. He's hanging around for a bit more action.
Yeah, I think you might get a burger in you.
Yeah, why not?
You're watching what you eat, obviously. Let's talk.
Gary
now.
Jubelin we're talking about.
Yeah, sorry, Gaz. I know we want to talk about the sort of crime stuff, but what are you doing for your do you drink?
I drink. I look at it this way. I train so I can live the life I want to live.
Yeah.
As in, if I want to get on the drink, I get on the drink. If I want to eat, I eat. I try to eat healthy and
you look good.
and that. But
that's the key. You look like Ronnie Palmer did 10 years ago.
Oh, no. Don't dive in with Ronnie Palmer.
He's got Ronnie covered.
Did you ever play footy as a kid?
No, soccer was my go.
Soccer?
Yeah. Love the soccer.
Right.
Yeah.
Where did you grow up?
Round Epping area.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just love soccer.
Soccer was my thing, and back in those days it was called wog ball, so you were sort of ostracised because you played soccer. But that was my thing. I love soccer and boxing, martial arts, and all that. That's my sort of thing I enjoy.
Nowadays, what do you like watching the UFC and stuff? Is that
I like it when they're on their feet.
Yeah.
And only because I don't understand the grappling as much. When they're on the feet, boxing is my go-to thing in watching with the sport.
What other interests you like, Gaz?
This might sound weird, but with my it's not that weird. With my training years ago, I started doing a lot of meditation and a thing called Qigong, which is like Tai Chi, but it's sort of a moving form of meditation. It's similar to Tai Chi and yoga and that type of stuff. So I got right into that, and that balanced out. Like I'd train hard, and that was the soft training. So I followed that path a little bit, and that's helped. When I got in, when it all blew up in the cops, it was sort of handy to just with the world sort of spinning out, I could sit down and just chill out a bit of meditation. So it does make me the most zen person, but it makes me more zen I would be without it, if that makes sense.
What about the sliding doors of your life? So you've had such a career in the force.
Yeah.
How did you fall into that? Were you always, as a kid, did you want to go and be a detective? How did you land on that?
I had no aspirations of being a cop. That wasn't my thing. I was trying to get away from the cops, in the what we all do when you grow up.
You were a scallywag as a kid?
Scallywag's a nice way of putting it.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and I'll run with scallywag.
Yeah.
But I got in the building trade.
Yep.
My old man was in the building trade, and then I was literally on a hot day. I was a sparky, and I was up in the ceiling. I came out, and I'm thinking this is a shit job, crawling around in the dust field ceiling at 40 degrees, and I saw two cops chasing a bad guy down the road. And that's what I want to do. That looks like fun. And I dead set applied the next day, and that was that sliding door moment. If I hadn't seen that, I probably wouldn't have been a cop.
Did you ever look at pulling out of the job? And what was your first sort of real dose of this is what policing's about?
Lots of different things, incremental sort of things. I remember, one low point, and you have some low points. I was running an operation where the suspect was shot and killed, and I remember that day. I'm thinking, when I came home, and you're told don't go out on the drink, go home, see your families and all that. So we did what cops did back in those days.
Got on the drink.
Or went out on the drink, and I remember going home that night, and I just felt, fuck, I didn't. Oops, sorry.
Yeah.
That's right.
Beep.
No, beep it out.
Beep,
that's
beep.
fine.
Do it again. I'll go beep.
I thought that's not what you want. I joined the police for. Seeing someone like that, and a few other incidents that you think, enough of it. And then, as a detective, sometimes you get yourself really into a dark world, and I had a pretty quick bounce back, so I could be, I don't want to face this. There was a couple of jobs where it was just really dark, and what I've found since I've left the cops, I didn't realise how much it impacted on you when you're on call the whole time. And basically, in homicide, every 6 weeks you'd be on call. If there's any murder in the state, you'd be called to it. And generally, you get called to one or two during that period. You could end up anywhere. Or you're running a case where the phone rings at the middle of the night. And for the first sort of 6 months after out of the cops, I kept looking at my phone. Why is it not ringing? Because you used to get called out all the time, and now it's just so nice to get into bed and think, I can sleep.
Peace of mind.
I'm not going to get called out. And,
Hey, Gary, I was listening to, and I was reading in the paper about Queensland coppers, how they're struggling to get numbers and they're offering money up front. Have we got the same problem down here in New South Wales, do you think?
Full credit to New South Wales. They've done something that I had problems with for a long time. But for the last, it might have been the last 10 years or so, it wasn't in my time, it wasn't when I joined. You had to pay to go through the academy. And I think it kept a lot of people out, men and women, that couldn't afford to, they might have had young families or at a stage in life where they needed an income and they couldn't afford to pay. Now they're getting subsidised for going to the academy. That's a big thing. I don't know if it's more money they need. I might get shouted down here. I think, police get paid pretty well, I think, now, and I'm probably going against the grain here. But I think just they need to encourage people that they want to be police. Policing is, to my way of thinking, a passion. It should be a vocation. You want to do it, whether they're going to pay you or not. I didn't look at, I've worked an hour's overtime or whatever. The job was on. You were just interested in the job. So I think the attraction's got to be the interest in the job. I'm a big advocate for it. I reckon it's a great job. There's so many different things, different paths you can go down to. And I look at the career I had. I'd sign up for it again in a heartbeat. I enjoyed it. And, it had its highs and its lows. But I think policing, they've just got to promote that, and that might attract people. So
if you're a young boy or young male or female who's out there, they're 19 or 20, and they're thinking about getting the coppers, you'd say go for it.
I'd say go for it with the cautionary part that it will change you. Now, how it changes you, that depends the type of person you are, but it'll come at a price at some stage. It will change you. But, there's plenty of different paths you can go down in policing, but think of it as a passion. You've got to be passionate about it. You're doing something. I enjoyed so much working homicide because of what I was doing with the victims.
Gary, I Catch Killers, very, very popular podcast. So you're going to continue doing that as well?
Yeah.
Yes. Now, just tell us about those who are driving the car, perhaps going home, they've just knocked off work. We are talking to Gary Jubelin. Breaking Badness. Can you give us the bullet points again on Breaking Badness, the podcast? Okay,
Breaking Badness is a 6-part podcast series where I've been given access to go behind the walls of a maximum security prison, Macquarie Correctional Centre, that's doing prison a little bit different in that they're giving the prisoners more freedom, and the theory being it prepares them better for life when they get outside. It's maximum security prison, so the bad guys are in there. The murderers, drug dealers, armed robbers, everyone's in there. It's a maximum security prison. My way of thinking and my access to it gave me a real insight into it. And I'm of the view that if they go into prison and come out better people, everyone's a winner. Yep. Punishment to me is them being taken away from society. That's their punishment, taken away from their families. Having said that, there's certain prisoners that I don't care about. The nature of their crime, they don't warrant a second chance.
No.
And it's not for everyone. And even the prisoners themselves, when I'm speaking to people, they were acknowledging the fact that this wouldn't work for everyone. And there was actually a murderer I was speaking to in the prison. He said, look, I know people are going to be up in arms about this, but the reality is, whether we've murdered someone or whatever, we will be released at some stage. And it's better for us to come out, equipped to cope with all the freedoms that the world has to offer.
Gary, go back in time when you were like interviewing someone, a suspected murderer or someone who's done a horrific crime. How do you keep your cool and not get up on the other side? Like, because I'd imagine they'd be a smart ass to you.
Yeah, they do. And I use one example, and I won't name the particular person, but he was a murderer in pedophile, a really nasty piece of work, and an evil human being. And I was interviewing him, and he's making admissions to the crime. And I could see he was trying to shock me and it was horrific in what he was telling me. And he'd only been out of jail for a short time, and he'd been in jail for abducting the young child and spent a lot of time in jail, then got out, only out for a short time, and he's done it again and murdered someone this time. that was the highlight of his life. He's going back to the jail for the rest of his life, and he wanted to go back and just fond memories. He was getting off when he was reliving the crime. The way, you do, anyone would want to lean over and belt him, but your job as a detective is obviously not to do that. And then you're actually not doing your job. You're stuffing up, and it's not the right thing to do. But the way I got at him was just ignore him.
Yeah.
Like he's telling me, and I'm treating it like it's a break and enter. And then the idiot's sitting in the charge dock, and if you spend long enough in the room, you get this rapport with someone. We've been in the room for 4 or 5 hours. I'm walking past, and he's looking at me thinking I'm going to say something or growl at him or whatever. And I just ignored him, and I think it was summer. So I just said to everyone in the police station, just ignore him. And we'd talk about the cricket or the football or whatever, and he's just sitting there.
Yeah.
And there he is. This is a big moment in life, and we've just stolen it away from him.
You're not paying him for it.
You're insignificant. We don't care about you. And, that's the way I got back. But to get back at him, answering your question first up, the best way you get back at him is just nail him with making sure it's a professional investigation, so there's no wiggle room.
Right. Because if you clipped them, you can't get out?
Well, potentially. You could jeopardise it. So you just make sure you cover, you nail them on every issue that you can and make sure you've got them beat.
Clearly you can't name anyone here, and maybe there isn't a name to name, but have you gone through the court process where in your eyes you are absolutely ironclad that this person is guilty, but for whatever reason they were proven not guilty? Or not proven not guilty, but they were announced as not guilty?
Yep, I have, and it sits hard, but you've got to accept the court's decision. Pushed and the Bowraville case where 3 Aboriginal children were murdered, and the person was acquitted of one of the murders. On the back of protests from the community where they marched on Parliament and different things, they changed legislation that brought in double jeopardy legislation, which means if you have been acquitted of a crime and fresh and compelling evidence comes in, you can potentially be retried. It hasn't come in, it's in legislation, but it hasn't worked at this stage. But at least there's something there that you can get another go at it. But from a personal point of view, it's devastating. But probably more so to the families of the victim, the ones that see it. But I know there's been times when people have literally got away with murder, and that's the rules, and I respect the rules. That you've got to have the checks and balances.
Can I ask a question? Because we're talking about this yesterday on a far lower scale. We're talking about Josh Giddey and the allegations against him and how his name's been blasted everywhere. Now, I've long held the view, but I'm sure there's smarter people than me and reasons as to why it doesn't happen. But I personally don't believe a person should be named for anything, really, until they are proven guilty. Therefore, we are genuinely giving people, innocent until proven guilty. I know that the media can also play a case in announcing people's names and putting the pressure on that way. Do you have an opinion on what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know, and it's such a contentious thing, and I've got views depending on the circumstances. There's some horrendous stuff that goes on, and I've been criticised as a police officer on releasing information, which I didn't. But I understand the criticism there, and I certainly understand your view. There's an argument that put forward that you need transparency in the justice system. So, if someone's been charged with something that's in the public's interest, and I use the example of sexual assault with the pedophiles, let's say. If someone's nominated as being charged with that, invariably other victims come forward. So there is a benefit to that. So if we go down the path that you're suggesting, which I'm not totally against, I understand it, but there might be barriers there. But it's such a complex thing, and it does play out in the media sometimes. Flipping the question a little bit, I think part of the problem with the justice system is all the evidence doesn't come out. The courts are very narrow in what is treated as evidence. Now, they'll say that it's because, we're smarter than you, we've set the legislation, this thing's not admissible. I use the example with a jury. If someone appears before a jury trial, invariably there's information that's not passed on to the jury because they think it'll be too prejudicial, in that, let's say you've been convicted of an assault and you're up for another assault, they won't let the jury know that you've been convicted of assault, even though you might have assaulted people, half a dozen times. So it's a complex thing, but yeah, I do have problems with the way people get hung out to dry, trial by media, because quite often, and now working in the media, the interest is when they're charged. By the time they're acquitted, no one's really interested. So it's sort of, it doesn't really balance out.
We got a text here through Gaz. It says, can you ask Gary about youth crime? It seems like there's no respect for authority. I was going to ask you about that, but it's all up in the Brisbane Gold Coast area. I'm seeing that.
Yeah.
Because my brother lives up there. He's a fiery up there, and he's saying it's out of control.
Yeah.
I wanted to know, about the kids. What happens if you get pinched? Are they just getting put back out in the street?
Because, Brian, we were petrified of policemen as children, weren't we?
Yeah. I know, and it's funny because I'm sitting here and I'm talking about in prison, if we treat people with humanity, it's better. I think we've got to be hard on kids at that stage because you can make a difference. That's another thing that Bernie Matthews said, and I reference him because he'd been right through the system. He's saying sometimes if we're too old, it's too hard to change. You can make a difference as kids. I see it time and time again where kids go off track, and if there's one good person in their life steering him in the right path or her in the right path, it can make a hell of a difference. But yeah, youth crime, we've got to get that respect back for the police. They tried something, or not tried, they still do it as far as I know, but up in Redfern, where the police will go in boxing with the kids in the morning and different things like that. Shane Phillips still does some work up there with Indigenous kids at Redfern. And I think that type of situation is a good thing. Bring that respect in. But why are the kids going bad? Like, I'm hearing what goes on up in Queensland as well, and it's frightening, isn't it?
Have you ever seen it so bad, like with drugs? Like ice is seems to be. People are saying, it's rife in all these country towns, but it must be rife everywhere.
Yeah. Ice is a problem, and I saw it the sort of latter part of my career that it does have some terrible consequences, and the addiction is quite strong, and people have access to it.
Yeah.
How do you restrict that? Do you legalise some drugs? The pill testing. There's so many different layers to it. How do you stop it? But I think we've just got to give kids purpose, and there's got to be consequences for actions.
Yeah.
I believe in that. I think I just.
Do you blame the parents sometimes?
I think, well, you blame the parents. If you slap a kid, you could be charged with assault. Whereas my old man would give me a kick up the arse if I did the wrong thing and I didn't do the wrong thing after that.
Yep.
You learnt. So, I'm a bit old school, but old school is so you can't go down that path now. But I think there needs to be discipline, because if you don't have discipline, we'd all go off track.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Well, this is what Cam says. Cam's text 3 goes, boys, with youth crime, from where I come from, unfortunately, juvenile detention is better living conditions than their homes.
Yeah, well, that's I don't know where he comes from, but that's sad too.
Yeah.
Where it's easier in that environment. So where there's breakdown in communities where going into detention is better than home.
And Gaz, how many episodes have we got on Breaking Badness?
We got six episodes, and it just takes us on the journey through. Where the prisoners speak to me, whether they'll speak to me to start with, because they didn't first up. They didn't, which I understood.
But you're not asking them on air or on podcast. Are you asking what they did?
No, we don't identify them, but we talk about their crime.
Yeah.
So you'll be hearing someone talk, and we'll reference the fact that, well, this is
we'll hear the prisoner's voice.
Oh yeah. That's the prisoners are the main voice on there. That was the interesting part about it. So I'm walking around the prison, and when they did decide to talk, well, what have you got to say? And they would tell me what they said. They said there was one funny part where this was in a more traditional prison, but it was in a heavy section, and they're formed around me, and there was a bit of toing and froing and all that, and they got to start speaking to me, and I said something like, I'm here to find out what you guys need, so I'll give you a voice. What do you need? And some smartass has gone, a set of keys.
Is there someone that wanted to be interviewed and you found out what they did, what sort of crime, and you went, nah, you're not coming on?
Well, we mentioned the Anita Cobby thing, and I was walking through the prison, and I saw one of the murderers there, and he came up and wanted to talk, and I didn't talk to him. Now, I'm meant to be going in there and talking to everyone to get their views, but there's some people that have crossed the line, and quite frankly don't care about
now,
that person.
You don't have to answer this, but I'll ask you, Sugar. Do you believe we should be able to have capital punishment here for certain crimes?
Oh, yes.
I know it's pretty heavy. I know it's heavy, but the way Gaz was talking about that, I'm going to drop an F-bomb now.
Yeah.
The murdering that smart-ass
Okay,
bloke.
by the way you framed the question, I'll answer it by saying I agree with you.
Well, just those people that you said was a murdering pedophile bastard.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. When it's beyond doubt, when it's absolutely beyond doubt, I don't know why everyone's mucking around with it. I do agree with that.
I don't know if it makes any difference. Yeah.
Well, can they be reformed?
They can't be reformed, and we've got to pay for them. But maybe pay for them, and hopefully they won't enjoy their life. But yeah.
Is that too heavy, Brooks? There's our producer. He's shaking his head. Is that too heavy, Brooksy? just wink. Just blink twice.
Calls on.
He was a suspect only on Sunday.
Yeah,
so
but not for that.
How can we ask him?
Yeah.
But we were talking before we got on air about John Killick, the fellow that escaped from Silverwater Prison in the helicopter. I know John well now, and we catch up a bit. But he was down in Pentridge Prison when they hung the last person. He was actually in the prison there, and he said it was just a horrible situation. And not talking from prisoners obviously, but someone being walked to the gallows and all that. And I don't know if we've got the stomach for it. Yeah.
But don't you? Anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't want to get into that.
No. The podcast, Breaking Badness, breakingbadness.com.au, supported by the Daily Telegraph.
And the other one, I Catch Killers, that's a beauty as well.
Gary, we've had some big guests on here. Yesterday we had Todd Gurley. We've had Scotty Pippen the last few months. We've had some massive guests.
Yeah,
I reckon this has been about as good as we've had, Brian.
This goes straight to the top.
Straight to the top. On
Power
Ture Crime
rankings,
Tuesday.
Gaz, 60-year-old, looking at it, looks 40.
Do you say that to all the guests?
Yeah. By the way, you're our first guest.
Gary Jubelin, thank you very much, mate.
Right.
We really appreciate
Thanks,
that.
guys. Good on you, mate.
We'll be promoting the podcast as it keeps coming out. Episode 1 is Conviction. You can catch up on that. Breaking Badness via News Corp. Investigation podcast. Gary Jubelin on fire. The text board. Apologies, we couldn't possibly get to all those text messages coming in.